All right, here we go. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties, obviously within our control, have caused a delay, but welcome everybody. What we'll do is a mic check for introductions, just like we usually do or like we did last week. This is a way to make sure that your mic is working. So if your mic is currently muted, please unmute your mic, and let's start with Hugh. Just say hello, Hugh.
Hello, mic check.
Okay. And how about Valentin?
Hello?
How are you today, Valentin?
I'm fine.
You got your Puma suit on, you're ready to go running, huh? Okay, now you can mute Valentin, please. Good afternoon, Emerson. How are you?
Good. Hello, how are you, everybody?
Good to see you today. Hello, William. How are you?
How are you?
You're probably happy to have the elections over, right?
Yes. We had election Wednesday, yes.
Very good. Okay, good day, Alavo. How are you, Alavo?
Oh, I'm fine. And you?
Excellent. Very good.
Yeah.
Muito bom. So, and there we go all the way up to Nairobi. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
I'm all right, Bill. How's everybody else?
Very good. Excellent. Kaite, we can't see you. You don't have to put on your camera necessarily, but there you are. You're there. Hi, Kaite. How are you? You're muted, but we can't hear you, but we see you. So we know you're there. Okay, you can hear me? That's good. All right, Joy, all the way over in Manila, using some new technology today.
Hi.
Oh, we could hear you for just 1 second, but now we can't. You're muted again. Oh, can't hear you, Joy. Sorry.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we got you.
Okay,
Great. Okay, how's things in Manila?
Good, doing well.
Wonderful. And finally, Jeanette, who is here from Goma. Hi, Jeanette. We know you're here because you took over our screen for us already today. Thank you. So, okay. So, unfortunately, we're missing a lot of souls, which is, we don't know exactly why, but I'll probably have to call people to make sure we have better attendance next time because this is not excellent. But I just see that Helia has just joined us. Leah, can you hear me? If you can, just say a quick hello. Hello, Helia. How are you? You're muted.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm well, thanks.
Great to hear your voice. Excellent. Okay, maybe the stragglers will come on. I did send the notice out to everybody to let them know. So welcome to Module 2 of our 6-module course. We're going to get right into it today. Hugh has got a content-packed webinar for us. Before we do, though, I just want to remind people of a few things. I'm going to do some shout-outs right now to the people who have done their assignments. And then if your name is not called, that means that you need to do whatever assignment I'm talking about. This is just a way of using an opposite effect than shame. I just have a new dog, and the new way of thinking about dogs is not to shame them, but to praise them. So I'm not treating you like dogs, but I'm just saying that if you've done your work, you're going to hear your name. So first of all, our very first assignment for everybody was to go on to our community and give us a little profile of themselves. And so far, Joy, Helia, someone needs to mute their mic here. Maybe it's Valentin. Oh, no? Yeah, that was it. Joy, Helia, Kaite, William, Olavo, Lillian, and Emerson have all posted to our community. So if you did not hear your name, then go ahead and post your little bio and introduction to that very first forum. That's so you can get in practice of doing discussion boards. We have at least one discussion every single module, sometimes more than one. So you really need to know how to use that skill. The second assignment was reflections on online learning, and that we have heard from Joy, from Kaite, from William, Alabo, and Lillian have all told us a little bit about your experiences or lack of experience with online learning. So thanks to everybody for doing that. And then finally, your first written assignment was a self-assessment. This is a very important kind of a way of gauging where you're at right now, and then we'll take a look at the end of the course how you do a post self-assessment to see what you gained as far as knowledge. So the people who have uploaded their self-assessment are Joy, Kaite, William, Alabo, and Lillian. So thanks to all you for getting in there and doing the required work. And if you didn't hear your name, that means you still got to do it. If you have any problems with uploading or posting to a discussion board, that's why I'm here, to help you do that. So you just got to contact me, and we'll either chat on Skype, or I can call you on your phone, WhatsApp, whatever you want to do. But it's very important that you get in it and get at it, because we have a lot of work to do, and this course goes by very quickly. In 2 months' time, we'll be done. So, and you'll be crammed full of MIS knowledge, hopefully, if all goes well. So. All right, well, that was the main thing that I wanted to say. The schedule has been posted, so you should be able to see what's going to happen each week. All of the documents, like today, you're going to have a webinar PowerPoint that Hugh will be using for the entire webinar, and that is a PDF that's available up on Module 2, so you can download it. It is suggested you download all of the documents that are available so you can reference them afterwards. And I'm pretty sure the recordings, which I put up in YouTube, are also available. So you could even though you're watching them and connecting to them through Canvas, you could actually copy the URL and save it for a later date for viewing. And the final thing I wanted to mention is that we don't have an interface between Zoom and Canvas. So when you attend this webinar, I can see your faces and I could take attendance, but I really would like, because some students come live and they attend like you guys are right now, and others are coming later on, I need to have some documentation that you actually participated in the webinar. So what we've done is make it really easy. You'll see an assignment that's right after the webinar, and all it is really a short statement that says, I attended the webinar, and then you upload that to the homework assignment, and that is just a documentation that I can put in the grade book that says that you were actually here. So don't forget to do that. After every webinar, I'll give you a little nudge to remind you, but that's your way of documenting that you were here. Other than the fact that I actually have a picture of your face, but I want to leave it up to you to do the documentation, so we have it all in the grade book. So, all right, that's enough announcements from me. I'll turn it over to Hugh. And just to be aware, this class is scheduled for 90 minutes, so we're almost 15 minutes into that, so we might go a little bit over. But go ahead, Hugh.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, wherever you are. Okay. You've had the introduction to the course in Module 1, but now we're getting into the content of the course. And what I wanted to do before we actually got into PowerPointing and all the rest of it, I just wanted to talk to you about some of the core documentation that we have. We have a manual which covers the entire MIS course that you're going to be going through. And this manual, I'm not sure if, can you see this right now? Is that visible? I'm probably not doing the right thing, Bill, in terms of...
It's not there yet.
Okay, just a moment. Let me go back down. Okay, just get back in. Hold on a sec. All right. Right. Oh, don't want that. Just a minute. Okay. Right, here we are. Back in. At least I thought. Oh, there we are. Okay. Right. So,
Still
the manual, basically the manual, let me just go to it right now. The manual looks like this.
Hey, Hugh, we're not seeing it quite yet.
Oh, it should be coming up. I actually select, wait a minute, which share. It would help if I clicked on share. Can you see my screen now?
Yes,
Yes,
it's
we can.
coming here.
Okay, good. Right. There's a manual which we produced for the management information system. It's a very long manual. It's about 112 pages, and it's broken up into a number of different sections. If you look on my screen now, you'll see, hold on a second, let me put it on your screen. Here we are. Here's the manual. Savings Group Information Exchange Management Information System. Okay, so this is the user guide for the MIS and project administrator. The MIS administrator is the person who sets up the MIS, and the project administrator is the person who makes sure that it's used at the project level. Okay. Now the manual is divided into a number of different sections. We have architecture of the MIS. That is to say, the fundamental design choices you're going to make about how to configure the MIS. Then the role of the MIS administrator in terms of setting up the system. Then we have the role of the project administrator in setting up the first project. Then we move into data collection, in which case we're going to be looking not so much at the software, but at the types of data that you're collecting. But then, once we've defined what the data is and you understand the definition of terms, we'll be looking at how you actually enter data into the system and the different types of data. We then finally move on to reports, and we have two levels of reports. We have reports which are at the level of project management, and we have reports which are operational reports, which is where you're looking at field operations, what is going on in the field. The project management reports are reports which basically are concerned with aggregated results, but operational reports is looking more at what is taking place in the field. And then we have reports in which you are able to aggregate the results of many different projects in an MIS or compare them. So the modules that we're working on are designed basically around these sections. Now, we're going to make this manual available to you, okay? But during this module, and in each module, we are going to be publishing a part of that manual. So let me just go there and show you what we'll be looking at. Okay, so here, for example, we have the, hold on a sec, let me just get that screen empty. Okay, right here we have only the part, pardon me, something went wrong there, just a second. Okay, here we have only a part of this, which is Module 1 architecture. So we've taken the same manual, and we've broken it out into various chunks. Now, these parts of the manual, which are basically forming the content of the webinar, they will be published every 2 weeks before the webinar, and you should go there at least a day beforehand on the Monday, and you should read through whatever is in that particular part of the manual. You don't have to worry about the full manual, because by the end of the workshop, you will be given the full copy of the manual. But bit by bit, we want to make it into bite-sized chunks, and we would like you every Monday for the Tuesday webinar to read through the published part of the manual. Okay, and that you'll find in this particular case is we're calling this Webinar 1 Architecture. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be going through the section of the manual that deals with system architecture. Now, once you've been through a webinar, everything is done, there will be, in this particular case, there are going to be 3 different exercises. There's going to be a discussion, okay, on Module 2. Then there is going to be a case study exercise in which you're going to be given a case study and you should respond to the questions asked at the end of the case study. And then there is a final summary discussion. So all of those are published now, but you will work through, first of all, the rubric for discussion, Module 1. then you'll move on to the MIS design case study, and you'll move on to finally onto the final discussion. But I don't want you to move on to the second discussion until you've been through the first discussion and the case study. So that's the kind of process we'll be following at every module. The webinar, then the discussion topics and case studies. Okay, any queries about that before I move on? Is it clear? Okay, I'll take silence as assent. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the webinar itself. Okay, so here we are, and I've got a number of questions for you, and you can answer these questions as they appear on the screen, and you can activate your microphones and be able to answer to the questions. The first question is, what is data, and what do you have to do to make it useful? Can somebody tell me what we mean by data? Perhaps, yes. What is data? Can somebody tell me what data is?
Hello. To my understanding, data is a set of information.
Is what, sorry?
Set of information with
okay.
characteristics that we use to make decisions.
Okay, now that was very interesting. You talked about data and then you talked about information. Can you tell me, let me just what is information and how does it differ from data? You used the word information, but is it the same thing as data?
Okay. Data is, we classify as data type of information.
Not quite. I want to know what the difference is between data and information. Let me give you an example, okay? I could say I have 2 cows, okay, this week, and in a year's time I have no, let me change that. I have 2 bags of maize, okay, and my neighbor has 3 bags of maize, okay? Now, can you from those 2 statements, I have 2 bags of maize and my neighbor has 3 bags of maize, can you give me what is data and what could be information? What is the data in that statement?
That you have 2 bags of maize, and that
yes,
and that someone else has 3
data,
bags
right?
of maize.
What about 3 bags of maize? Is that also data?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you've got 3 bags of maize and you've got 2 bags of maize. All right. Can you derive any information from that? What information can you get?
Information is that there are people who have some maize somewhere.
No.
That's information.
No, the information can be numerical. Let me, if I gave you a number, what can you tell me? What is 5? I said I have 2 bags of maize, one person. Another person has 3 bags of maize. And I've said I've got a number 5. What is 5?
It's just a data.
No, it's not the data. It is information. It is the total number of bags that these 2 people have, right? Correct? Because one has 2, the other one has 3. The 2 is data, the 3 is data, but the information is that these 2 people together have 5 bags of maize.
Correct.
Right? Let me give you another piece of information, and you tell me what it is. 2.5. What is 2.5 when you think of what I've just told you? One person has 2, one person, yes, exactly. One person has 2, the other has 3. In total, you have 5. Okay, that is information. Another piece of information is that the average that these two people have is 2.5. So basically, data is raw numbers, and information is how you use those numbers to develop an understanding of what it is you're looking at. And what you're looking at in this particular case is the total and the average, and it could be many other things. Okay, all right. So I wanted you to understand that, because information is not the same thing as data. Information is what you do with data to help you understand better what it is you're looking at or trying to manage. Okay. So, for example, I could say I have in my project I have 200 groups, and I could say the average field officer has 15 groups. Okay, and so the information there is that the average is 15. I've learned something. I have so many field officers, I have so many groups, so I have an average. So basically, you're taking data and you're producing something useful, because you can then say to your trainers, oh, the average one of you has 15 groups. Are you doing better than that or worse than that? So very simply, take numbers and produce information that you can use to inform people or to manage your program.
Hugh?
Now,
Hugh?
having said that,
Hugh?
can somebody give me a simple, yes?
Hugh, your PowerPoint is not showing us the full screen. We're seeing the preview. So you need to do one more step. Remember that we had this problem last time?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Then in that case, I need to switch screens. Just a minute. Just a minute. Annotate remote control more. Yes, this happened before, didn't it?
Yeah, we had that problem last year. There was like one last step you had to do. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what it is, actually. Just a minute.
I think it was in display settings.
Yes, I think it is. I'm just looking for them. Where's display? Hang about. Just a minute. Not sure if this is going to work.
That looks good. No, actually, I think we're still seeing the editing version.
Yes, I know. I'm just trying to do it. Maybe I should. Hold on. More invite, record, disable, share computer sound. Okay. Well, this happened last time. I'm just trying to figure it out. Just a minute. Wait a minute. Hold on.
You're right at the top. Are you able to see display setting at the top?
Oh yes, I see. Now it's showing. Got it. Okay. Whoa! Bravo! Bravo!
Got it. There you go. Thanks. You just have to remember to do that next time.
Thanks for that technical assistance, Andrew. Okay. So here we go. What is a management information system? Okay. So what is a management information system? Can somebody tell me? We've already talked about data. We've also talked about information. Take that concept one step further. What is a management information system? A simple phrase covering the description of what it is. Any volunteers? Come on, guys. Somebody stick your neck out. Take a chance. We've already said you have to, first of all, start off with what? What are you gathering, first of all? Anybody? What's the first thing you do if you're running a management information system? What do you have to collect?
I can give it a try.
Sorry?
Hello. So I can give it a try.
Go ahead.
Okay, so when I talk about a management information system, I think from what you talked about, there is collecting data. So
correct.
It's a system which captures data. Yeah, so I think the first variable would be about data capturing, and then that data is processed into useful information. So I think basically it's a system which captures data which can eventually be processed and used to inform programming.
Superb, really excellent summary. can you just add one thing to it? Okay, you've processed the data, you've got the information, and you get, what do you get? How is that information presented?
That information is presented in form of reports. So reports can be extracted and then presented in a form of a report.
Right, and what do you do with that information?
So the information that you collect will help us to make certain decisions.
Okay,
For example,
excellent.
yeah.
No, that's excellent. Let me just ask you one other question. Does everybody who is in the system, does everybody get the same report? Do the field officers get the same reports as the program manager or the country director?
I've forgotten, in terms of the level of reports, I think they differ.
Yes, very good. So here's what I would say. An MIS is a system in which data is collected, processed, and analyzed and delivered to decision makers at all levels in a program or project to make informed, appropriate decisions. Are we okay with that? All right, so that's a simple definition. I'm spending a lot of time on this to make sure we've got this definition in our heads. So you're collecting data, you're processing it, you're using it to make decisions. Now, this is interesting because notice I am stressing decisions. I'm not talking necessarily about reporting to your donor. We're talking about management, so you're going to improve management practice. You can also get reports which are, of course, informative and useful for donors, for head office, for country director, but you also have reports which are related to operations and trying to improve what is done operationally. Okay, so now let me just ask a few questions here. Next question. Who uses the information and how does it change? Who are the users of management information system information? Who do you think is going to be interested in receiving reports? Okay, can we first of all start off by thinking about operations? That is to say, you know, the people who are actually doing the work, then the ones who supervise them. Who are the people who are going to be using the MIS information operationally? That's to say, in the field. Any suggestions?
Trainers?
Yes. You've got, how many types of trainers do you think we have? When you talk about trainers, are you talking about project employees? Are you talking about what?
For us, we have trainers that help with the management of all the savings groups.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else like to suggest another type of trainer you might have?
There are also train of trainers that
supervisors, right? That is to say, trainers and the people who are managing them, all right? What about, let me ask you, let me just show you, I'll give you a list here. This is what I've come up with. And this is, the first one is very often forgotten, is members, okay? That is to say, who are members? Members of what?
Members of a savings group.
Right. And then we've got field officers, and field officers are usually people who are employed by a program. And then we have village agents. Anybody like to tell me who a village agent might be? What do I mean by a village agent?
Village agents are I would say, for instance, here in Mozambique, there would be the people who mobilize the members.
Okay, and are they usually project employees, or are they volunteers, or do they receive money from groups?
They are paid by the groups, not by the projects. They might
Okay,
be
that's
paid
the key point. Yes, and they are also living in those communities, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then of course we have supervisors, people who are making sure that the field officers are doing their jobs properly, that they're creating groups, that they're recruiting and supervising village agents. And of course, members, the groups themselves, they want to know what's going on. All right, so they use MIS information as well. Are we okay with that? Right, I shall take silence as agreement. And now let's talk about the next level, which is program. In other words, once you move away from the field, who are the people who are most interested in receiving reports? We're now talking above the level of supervisors. Who do you think that could be?
operations managers.
Yeah. Program coordinators or managers, yes.
The accountants.
Possibly, yes.
And then the donors.
Donors, yes, the external audience. Maybe your
Director.
I beg your pardon?
Program director.
Yes. Let me give you a list. Program coordinators and managers, country managers like country directors, international offices. Maybe you have an office in a third country, in a donor country, the donors themselves. And of course, what about the media and the general public who might want to know something about your program? So, you know, when you look at this, you see that you've got a lot of stakeholders at all levels, okay? All the way from groups, right through village agents, field officers and supervisors, through local and international managers, donors, and the general public. So you can see that you're going to have to present the information in a variety of different ways. Now, I've got a question for you. How does the information change as the users change? In other words, how is the information given to a village agent from the MIS going to be different to the information given to a donor? Can somebody suggest what that might be? Maybe I can put the question to you a bit differently. Is the information given to a village agent the same as the information given to a donor? Yes or no? Is it different?
Usually a bit different. Maybe they've donated for a small portion of savings groups, or maybe they're just interested in knowing how many savings groups or the number, the amount saved, whereas if you were organizing or managing.
So you're talking then about the kind of information that looking at aggregations. I would be looking at totals, but if I'm going down towards the field, I would be looking at the individual group level results. So what we're looking at is the process of synthesis. Okay? what that means is your data here is very, very detailed, but your data here is very much summarized data. So you're going through a process as you move further from the field of having summarized data. And you have to have reports for all of those stakeholders that are appropriate for them. Okay? So an international office may not be interested in what is going on in an individual group or with a village agent or even with a field officer. They may be interested only in how is the program doing in total, okay? But if I'm a field officer, I would want to know how all of my groups are doing. So simply saying, the further you get away from the field, the more the data is synthesized, okay? Right, so that's basically the point I'm trying to make. So we started off by saying an MIS takes data, it is processed into information, which is used for reports which go to different people in an organization at different levels. And the higher up you go in an organization and away from the field, the more compressed and synthesized the data becomes. And that's basically a fundamental design consideration for an MIS. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to look at, hold on, I clicked on the wrong screen. Here we are. Okay. Okay, data collection, data entry, report preparation, and report distribution. Okay. I'm looking now at a fairly typical situation in which you have an international organization or a large national organization which is working in partnership with partners who are implementing savings group projects. So what we're that went far faster than it was supposed to. Let me just go back a step. Okay, sorry. Okay. Okay, so what we have basically is we have here a national NGO or training agency, and we have an implementing partner. Okay, we have a senior management team in the partner, and then we have field officers, supervisors, field officers, and we have an MIS person. And over on the NGO or training agency side, we have technical assistance provided to the partner. So what we're looking at is technical assistance going across to supervisors and coordinators and directly to field officers as well. You're then looking at the training being given to an MIS manager who can report on what is going on. Then we're looking at data coming from savings groups and going to field officers and being forwarded or entered into the management information system. So this is, for the moment, this is a paper-driven process here, and it is converted into digital information when it is entered into a computer. One small aside here, it is possible to use mobile phone for data collection, but I'm not going to go into that in much detail in this training, although it does exist, and we will cover it to some extent. So information is collected from the groups. It is collected by field officers, and it goes through, entered into the computer, and then it is distributed as a series of reports. You have reports which go, first of all, to the supervisor. So the field officer supervisor receives them from the management information system and then distributes them internally down to the field officer. So we have this circular motion of data coming from the field, being converted information, and some reports are being sent down to field officers. So we're getting feedback. And then the second set of reports are going to the senior management team inside the implementing partner. And a third set of reports are being shared with the national NGO or training agency in the country. So you've basically got two key movements of data, of reports. You have the reports which go to the supervisors and then go down to the field officers. That is an enclosed loop, and it's detailed information which the field officers use to improve what they're doing, and for the supervisors to be able to understand which field officers are stronger, which officers need more help. And then you're seeing data going to senior management team in a more aggregated form here, and in an aggregated form here to the training agency. So this here is detailed operational information. This is senior management information. So that's basically how an MIS is configured or conceived of within an organization. Right. Any questions on that before I move on to the question of MIS architecture, which is the substance of this week's webinar? Okay, I'll take that as no questions for the moment. Right, let me move on. Now, I'm going to show you now how the MIS is structured in the simplest possible way. Okay, if you look at this, screen here, you will see you have a grey box here, dark grey box, and that is the MIS. Okay, the MIS requires an MIS administrator, and it also requires a project administrator. The MIS administrator is the person who sets up the MIS. The project administrator is the person who manages it operationally. So the role of the MIS administrator is to create the MIS in the first place, and then to create a project. Okay? And then the MIS administrator gives credentials to the project administrator. Do you know what I mean by credentials? Everybody okay on that? I'll have to assume that that's a yes. Basically, it means the usernames and passwords to be able to use the system. Right. Now, once the MIS administrator has done that, they also create user-defined fields. Now, can anybody suggest to me what I mean by a user-defined field as opposed to a standard field? What is a user-defined field? What do I mean by that? And can you maybe give me an example?
User-defined field is unique. It's a unique identifier that you need in your project. For example, For example, in our region, we serve people who are HIV positive and the ones that are HIV negative.
You have what, sorry?
For example, in our region, we serve people who are HIV positive and HIV negative. So we can use the user-defined field to say from this number of people, we have 2 HIV positive patients.
Okay, excellent. That's exactly right. In other words, it is a data field which is useful to your project, but isn't part of the standard fixed data fields in the system. So that means that you can customize your project data to your interests. Okay, the MIS administrator also has control over the configuration settings, and they produce management reports. So when they are going to set up a project, they set up the MIS, they create the project, and they assign credentials. So what they do is they have a project administrator, okay, who has now got credentials given to them by the MIS administrator, and this is what the project administrator does. Okay, they set up a table of trainers. Okay, now until you have set up the MIS as MIS administrator and also set up a table of trainers as project administrator, you cannot enter data. You can only enter data once you've set up a table of trainers. Okay, because if you haven't got a list of trainers, you won't know who actually created the groups. So we set up a table of trainers within the system so that you don't have to type in the names every time. You can manage project configuration settings. And notice it's not only you who can manage project configuration settings. This is something that the MIS administrator can also do. And then a project administrator will also enter and validate data on a small-scale project and create management and operational reports. Now, I say here a small-scale project because sometimes you want to have a data entry officer because you have a very big project and you need a person whose job it is to enter data. But on a small project, it can be done by the project administrator. So the data entry officer is optional, okay? And the data entry officer can also create management and operational reports, but notice the data entry officer cannot manage the project configuration settings. Okay, so now here I am. I'm the MIS administrator. I've set up one project with one project administrator, and let's say I'm not going to bother with a data entry officer. So off I go. I'm ready to enter data. Now let's take it to the next step. Okay, here is an MIS with a single project, okay, created by an MIS administrator. Here we have in your MIS, you have project number 1. Okay. Next, I create an additional 2 projects. So up here, that number has changed to 3. So the MIS administrator within my MIS has created 3 projects. Now, theoretically, there is no limit to the number of projects that I can have in an MIS. I have some projects which have got some MISs, for example, in Rwanda, with 13 or 14 projects in one MIS. Okay? Now, I want to ask a question to you. Okay? I've set up my MIS, and I'm the MIS administrator, and let us say I want to know the number of people who are HIV positive. Okay? So I'm going to create a user-defined field. Okay. Now, if I create a user-defined field as project administrator, this is what's going to happen. The field is going to show up in all 3 projects, not just one, all of them. So the user-defined fields are linked to an MIS. Okay. So all user-defined fields created by the MIS administrator automatically appear in the data entry field of every project in the MIS. Now, I'm going to introduce a new idea. What do I mean by user-defined fields? Well, we have 2 classes. Okay, we have what we call standard data fields and user-created fields. It's a bit of a complicated idea, but what it boils down to is that within the system, we have a selection you can make of standard data fields, such as, for example, name of village, name of chairperson, telephone number of chairperson, and so on, which you don't have to choose. They are not mandatory. So we call those user-defined fields because you are selecting them from a standardized list. But you also have a set of fields which are created completely by you because they're not appearing in the standard data field lists. So this might be something, for example, like number of widows, number of people who are HIV positive, quality of group at the end of first cycle, and so on. So you have these 2 sets of groups that, of data fields that you can they're not built into the system. They're not mandatory. You can add them in as you wish. Okay. Now, can you see a problem here in terms of my MIS now? Okay. I've got an MIS and I've got 3 projects in it. Okay. Can you see a problem with that? What do you see as the challenge? Okay, let me say project 1. Project one is a project which is working with people who are HIV positive. Project two is a project that is working with people who are involved in tree planting. And project three is a project which is involved in maternal and child health. Can you see a problem then of having them all in one MIS? Let me repeat. Project one is about agroforestry. Project one is about HIV. Project two is about agroforestry. Project three is about maternal health. What would be the challenge if I have all of those three projects in one MIS? Look over here.
The issue would be that if you don't want to check with the maternal health if they're HIV positive or vice versa, then you would have a lot of additional fields that you don't need to fill in for your projects that would kind of distract you from your project mission.
Right, that's quite correct. So for example, if I was asking questions about HIV of people who were growing trees, and I was asking questions about growing trees of people who were HIV positive, they would not be relevant. They would be, so in other words, I can't ask, if I've got user-defined fields, which have got a sectoral focus, they can only really apply to projects which have got that sectoral focus. Okay, but if I have another sectoral focus in another project, the user-defined fields might be quite different. So all of a sudden, I can't have all of my projects in one MIS, right? So what do you think I'm going to have to do? Well, I'll give you the answer, okay? Because we need to move on a bit, okay? And here is the answer. I have three different MISs, okay? So here I have an MIS which is only looking at savings groups and nothing else. This is a cluster of projects which are working in agriculture, and this is a cluster of projects working in health, and they all have their own user-defined fields. These are going to be user-defined fields that focus on agriculture. These are going to be user-defined fields that focus on health, and these are probably not going to have any user-defined fields at all. So my MIS administrator has created three MISs. Fair enough?
Hugh, let me just add something that may be helpful. Just to say that for a start, all these projects are involved in savings groups, and that's why they're in this system. But the ones in the first box, these three projects only focus on savings groups. That's their main focus.
That's right.
The ones in the middle, they do savings groups, but they're also involved in agriculture.
Yes.
And likewise, the ones at the extreme right, they do savings groups, but they are also in health.
This is, in fact, very, very good clarification. Thank you, Andrew. In fact, I would put it the other way around. I would say the savings group projects are focused only on savings groups, but the agriculture projects may be focused on agriculture, but they're doing savings groups as part of their agricultural program. And you may have a health program which is focused on maternal and child health, but it's promoting savings groups amongst its target population. Okay, but now you could put all of these projects in one single MIS if you did not have user-defined fields. But if you have user-defined fields which are specific to a sector, then you have to have your separate MISs. Okay? Now, we have a bit of a problem all of a sudden, because here, if I'm looking at these three projects here, I can aggregate them and I can compare them. I can also aggregate and I can compare these two projects. And I can aggregate and compare these two projects. But I cannot aggregate all 7 projects and compare all 7 projects in one table. Okay? I can't do it. They're separate. So the MIS administrator has no way of doing anything other than producing reports for their own projects within an MIS. Okay? Well, the solution to that is to create what we call a network. Now, here's a network. Now, we have here 3 MISs, and it just so happens that 2 of them are in Kenya, and 1 of them is in Tanzania, okay? And they're all got, each MIS has got different projects in them, okay? And I want to create a network. So I create a network which is managed by an independent network administrator who is not the MIS administrator. What the network administrator does is the network administrator identifies the projects that they want in their network. Okay? Now you'll notice here that the network administrator has contacted 4 projects and it has left these 2 alone. And the reason for that is these 2 projects have nothing to do with whatever the network administrator is interested in. It could be, for example, that the network administrator is interested in agroforestry, so they've identified projects that are involved in agroforestry in different countries, and they could even be in different organizations. But more normally, if I go back to the previous slide here, you have a situation in which you've created 3 MISs in one institution, and you can create a network which links all of them together. I haven't shown it here. I've shown here the MIS administrator creating them, but they could also create a network within an organization to aggregate and compare projects. But I can also go across institutions and to different countries, and I can create a network which works across all of those 3 MISs and selects 4 out of the 7 projects. And the way this works is that the network administrator sends an invitation to the projects, and the projects have to accept the invitation if they're going to be part of this person's network. Okay? All right? And one final point is that completely separate from the user-defined fields created by the MIS administrator, the network administrator can create user-defined fields as well. Now, I'll give you an example. Plan International, for example, has an East African network, and it has over 100 projects in this network. Okay, and what it has done, it has asked the users, the project users, for some basic information on the number of orphans in each program. So each one of those projects receives a request, a data field from the network saying number of orphans in member households, and it shows up in all projects in all MISs that are part of the network. Okay, so to recap, we go back a bit. Here you have the basic structure of an MIS with a network of MIS administrator who creates an MIS here, who creates a project and designates a project administrator and gives them usernames and passwords. They also create user-defined fields, And the project administrator is responsible for setting up a table of trainers and entering data. The data entry officer is optional. Within an MIS, you can have more than one project, and you can create user-defined fields for all of the projects in that MIS. Okay, if you have a case where you have different, you have savings group programs in different sectorals within your country program, you can have more than one MIS, and you can link them together in a network. Okay, this here simply shows the MIS administrator creating these, but it doesn't show the network. The network is shown here, which happens to be not a national network, but an international network, where an international network administrator has selected 4 projects out of a total of 6, sorry, that's right, out of a total of 6 to be part of that network. And the network administrator can create network-defined fields. How am I doing for time? Oh, not too bad, actually. Okay, now I'm sure I've completely confused all of you. Okay, so this is your chance to speak up and ask me to go back and clarify any doubts or concerns you have.
Within a network, what are the special reporting capabilities? Are there any? So I know you said if you have multiple MISs, you can only compare at the aggregate. For networks, is there any special reporting available or no?
Yes, basically at the network, let me just go back to the MIS level, okay? Now, if you take the MIS level here, at the MIS level, you can get aggregate reports and you can get comparisons between projects, correct? Okay, and but if I'm at the network level, I can do exactly the same. I can, any projects that are in the network, I can aggregate and compare them. Okay, so I can aggregate all of these and I can compare all of these. And the reports look exactly the same as the MIS level, with the single exception that the financial figures are in US dollars, because you may be reporting across different countries. Anybody else? Okay, if there's no further questions in this, I'm going to close this down and I'm going to open up, tell me if you can see this. Just a minute, let me bring it down. Can everybody see this now, the MIS opening page? Andrew, can you see this? It says Module 1, Architecture.
Clear, you can see it.
Okay, good. Just wasn't sure whether it was actually showing. Sometimes this is a bit mysterious. Okay, guys, now listen. Basically, everything I've talked about is shown here and in this document. This shows a single project. This shows 3 projects. This shows several projects within different MISs. This shows projects with user-defined fields, and this shows a network, okay? And then there's a section on selecting the right architecture, and there are things to think about, okay? And the first thing is, do not rush it, okay? Now, let me explain why I say that. Very often, because people have not been through a training, very often they will set up the MIS, they'll create a project, and off they go. And they put in some user-defined fields, and then they run into problems because they then find that, oh, they've got a project which needs different user-defined fields, and they hadn't thought it through. And so now they're forced to create a new MIS MIS and they haven't thought it through, or they've got two projects in one MIS and they realize if they're going to have user-defined fields for one which are different to the other, they're going to have to move that project out of one MIS and into another one. You can do it, but it's helpful if you don't need to do it because you thought it through in the first place. The other thing is this. It depends who you are. Let me say what I mean. For example, who runs the MIS? Is it going to be the organization, let's say the international organization, or is it going to be the local partner? Okay? I mean, some international organizations, for example, I'm working with, well, it doesn't matter. Some international organizations have a lot of partners and they say, right, we are going to create an MIS and we're going to create projects for each of you within this MIS. So they give it to the partner and the partner is quite happy. But the partner then is stuck because they can't create new projects for themselves because it belongs to the international organization. On the other hand, if you're going to create MISs at the partner level, it's a lot more work. You have to actually go out and train them, and you have to find competent people. And it's a lot easier to set up your own MIS with projects for your partners than it is for your partners. But if you set it up for the partner then has the possibility of being able to create their own projects for the future. Okay. Secondly, consider whether or not you need user-defined fields. Now, I want you to really be careful about this because one of the big problems with MIS is people tend to say, instead of the question they usually ask is, they tend to say, oh, I would like to have user-defined fields. Well, I would like this, I would like that, I would like the other. And they end up with a great long shopping list of user-defined fields. And they only realize after they've started to collect data that it's a lot of work. You know, you've added 20 user-defined fields. So suddenly the field officer is no longer supervising the group. They've been turned into an enumerator running around collecting data. So the golden rule with user-defined fields, in my view, is what somebody used to tell me about commerce in the English language. And the golden rule was, if in doubt, leave it out. And I think the same is true of user-defined fields. If you're going to have a user-defined field, you need to ask yourself the question, why do I need to know this? What purpose does it serve? Am I actually going to use this information? Is it going to be a big burden to collect it? So maybe you don't need user-defined fields. And if you don't, your life in terms of the MIS is simplified. But of course, your ability to produce varied information is restricted. Okay, so if you're going to use UDFs in a single MIS, you have to make sure that they apply to all projects in an MIS. And then you have to say to yourself, if they don't, and I need more than one MIS, that means I will need to create a network. So you have to consider that user-defined fields, they drive you in some fairly complicated directions. They send you in the direction of having to create more than one MIS. They send you possibly in the direction of having to create a network. So you should have a very compelling reason for collecting data. Maybe your donor demands it, in which case your hands are tied. But my basic problem is that too many people start out by saying, let's collect this data and that data and the other data. And it's only later on that they start to think out why they want this data and how they're going to use it. So the first thing to think of is, what must I know if I'm going to achieve my project's objectives, and if I'm going to be more and more efficient, and if I'm going to satisfy the needs of the donors? Okay. Once I know that, and I've made it clear, I winnow it. I hold it up in the wind and I see what blows away as being unimportant, and I stick to the essentials. Okay, because it's collecting the data, it's entering the data, it's analyzing the data. And if you don't have the capacity to analyze it, then don't bother to collect it. So I'm really warning you about user-defined fields. Okay, right. So then, how does geography affect the way in which you will use the MIS? This is a very interesting question. Let me give you an example. Okay, now take a look at this table here. Okay, this is actually this is in Tanzania. This is a project. This is a partner called CODED, a partner of Plan, and these are all the projects they have. And within one MIS, they have all of their projects. They don't have any user-defined fields. And what you'll notice here, is, let me just get this right, what they've done here is we've got BOC2 Gator, BOC2 Ifakara carryover, BOC2 Mwanza carryover. So we've got 3 projects which are carryovers in Banking on Change 2, but they are in 3 different places. Now, let me explain something to you. This was one project, but it operated in 3 different parts of the country. So what Plan did is they said, what we're going to do is we're going to divide them up into 3 projects. They created 3 projects in one MIS, okay? But they identified them differently with the name of the zone. So when they came to do their reports, they could compare Gator with Ifakara and Mwanza, and they could also aggregate the 2. So they could aggregate their entire program, but they could also compare. You'll notice also that we have the same as BOC2 with YSLA in Ifakara, Morogoro, and Mwanza. So they could do the same. They could aggregate YSLA programs. Or if they wanted to, they could take all of BOC2 and they could aggregate. So it was highly, highly flexible, but the limitation was that they didn't have any user-defined fields, okay? But what my point here is not to confuse you. I'm trying to say, and this is really practical, if you are operating savings groups programs in different parts of the country, it's a good idea to create separate projects for each part of the country, even if they are within one donor program. Okay, so this was BOC2, but it was in these 3 different places. So by giving these separate identifiers, they were able to analyze the efficiency, the relative efficiency and effectiveness of their programs in different places. So what I want you to do before the next session, before you actually undertake any of the exercises, I want you to read this whole section right through to the end of page 6, okay? And I also want you to think a little bit about how you might name programs in such a way that they tell you a lot. You don't have, but by the fact that in this particular case, they named the project here, they named the zone, they named the subtype of the project, just by looking at the title, they were able to identify it, especially when it came to creating a network, but they were able to identify it and understand it. So standardizing the way in which names are created is something to bear in mind. So I don't want to add much to this except to say read through to page 6 before you get involved in any of the exercises. Okay. Now, I'm done if there are no further questions, except I want to then talk a little bit about the exercises that you'll be carrying. Okay, so let me go away from there. Any questions, clarifications? Bill, have you anything you'd like to add?
Not really. I just want to re-emphasize to everybody that people should try their best to keep up with the assignments. Most everybody that's on the video today, I'm on the broadcast today, have been able to keep up. So there I am. I want to join you in real life. So just want to encourage people to keep going and make sure if you have any problems to let us know. That's pretty much it. And plus, Placide, if you happen to know Theones Rangera and Valentin Dusabe and can give them a little nudge to participate, because I know they belong also to your organization, that would be great, because so far we haven't seen much of them, and we don't want them to miss out and fall too far behind. So I don't know if that's possible for you, but thank you anyways. And I appreciate everybody showing up today. And as I've said, this will be recorded and posted within the next probably 2 or 3 hours, or at least by later this afternoon. And we only had one glitch where my internet went out for a minute, so thank God.
Can I just add one final point? When
Please.
it comes to the discussions and the case study exercise, you should begin the discussion for discussion 1 in module 2, and you should first of all read the part of the SAVIX manual, move on to the rubric for discussion for module 2, and get started on that. And then once you've done all that and you've read that, tackle the case study. Okay, and then once the case study is done, we can move on to discussion 2. I believe they're all published now. Is that correct, Bill?
I'm sorry, Hugh, what was published?
All 3 things: the rubric for discussion, the MIS design case study, and the rubric for discussion 2.
I'm pretty certain they are. Let me just go double check real quick here while we're all right.
I saw. I'm never quite sure what shows on the student view and what shows on ours.
I know that I made everything live. All right, so for module 2, what's live now is the user guide webinar 1, which is where I will post this recording, webinar 1 participation, which is what I asked everybody. Please go to that and fill out the quick form and then upload it. Then that lets me know that you were actually here. Module 2 discussion 1, the SAVIX MIS, how is it different and how does it information vary between stakeholders? And then module 2 assignment 1, MIS design case study, and module 2 discussion 2, 3 questions relating to architecture. That's all up there.
Right, that's great. So as I say, just once again to reiterate, is to read the section of the manual, the user's manual, go to discussion 1, module 2, begin that discussion and tackle the design case study. And once you've done that, move on to the discussion 2 for module 2. Okay, well, yeah, and we want these all done pretty much by the time of the next webinar, right, Bill?
Yeah, which is a week from today. And Joy was actually asking how much time do you think it would take to devote to the assignments?
To be honest with you, the assignment, okay, the discussion, we want to see participation, and you get scored on participation. So, and a lot of very useful stuff comes out in these discussions between people. So we want to see you up there doing that. But the case study itself is not that complicated. If you sit down and really think about it and reflect back on what we've done, the actual writing of it can be done in less than a page. So it's probably about 45 minutes, an hour's work. But it does depend upon you reviewing the materials that we have recommended you to look at so that the answers become clearer to you. And take your time over it. So I would say, generously, a maximum of an hour and a half.
And then there's also the discussion board. Would that be considered as part of that too?
Yeah, the discussion board the discussion is quite useful because it basically says, but basically it all feeds into being able to conduct the exercise, okay? Yeah. So we want to see participation, and we want to see people asking questions and clarifying, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay?
Yeah.
Also, if I could add something there regarding discussion.
Sorry?
Let me say something about discussions.
Yes.
Basically, what I've seen is that after a webinar like this, and things may look a bit unclear, a bit complicated, but it's during the discussions that things get clarified. So I would agree with Hugh and Bill that the more we participate in these discussions, the easier it is to understand some of the issues that are not very clear during the webinar. And then let me also say something, Bill, about Valentine. actually, Valentine, as far as I think I know, he's online right now. He's participating, and I think we may have. I don't know if he belongs to Nudor. I'm not sure. Placida belongs to Nudor, but Valentine, you can clarify
Valentine
that.
belongs to Nido.
Okay, very good, very good. And he's available right now. He's online.
Okay, well, he didn't log into this this webinar, so I was just curious. All right, and yeah, just underscoring what Andrew had to say. When you do an online discussion post, it's important to do something more than just a sentence or two, only because, as Hugh and Andrew have said, you really learn from each other. So if you don't understand something and you put it up there in the discussion board, that gives another student who might have a similar issue an opportunity to weigh in and give their perspective. So I just want to encourage people to not be too short about putting your answers in the discussion board, and then by all means go back, and after you see, even though you've posted and then somebody has responded, to keep the discussion going if it seems worthwhile, seems interesting enough, or if there are additional questions you have. That way, when you read the whole discussion, and particularly students that are coming in late read the whole discussion, it ends up being a lot of learning because you guys have kind of processed what's going on and have an opportunity to ask questions that might not have come up in the webinar, and just makes it a richer experience for everyone. So please do that. All right, any other questions that anybody has today? All right, well, we really appreciate your attention, and hope you have a good week, and hope you're able to keep up with the assignments. We have nine out of 12 people are here today, so that's pretty darn good. I'm happy with that. The others have been harassed, and I received various emails to let them know that they should show up next time. Right, the iron fist. Well, that's my job. I'm the, in American politics they call it the whip. The person that goes behind gets everybody whipped up. It's like, come on, you got to keep going. You got to keep the wagon train going here. So, anyways, using some strange American metaphors here. Anyways, thanks very much. Everybody have a great day, and thank you, Hugh, for your good facilitation, and Andrew for your support. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to end the broadcast in 10 seconds, unless there's something else anybody wants to say.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay.
All the best. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.